morning, everybody. Welcome to today's boot camp session with the Small Business Boot Camp and Resource Collective. We are working to help small business throughout Arizona return stronger than ever. We appreciate the support of our community partners. We couldn't do this without them. They've been very helpful throughout this entire boot camp, and with the sessions we have going forward through the end of June, we've got some great sessions planned, courtesy of these community partners. So the Small Business Boot Camp and Resource Collective is designed to help prepare small businesses, focusing on less than 20 employees. However, all businesses are invited to attend, to help them emerge from the COVID crisis stronger than ever. That's where we get to return stronger, and I love that term. It's a statewide initiative supported by our community partners. We listed many of them on that previous slide, but we've had such an awesome response. It's hard to fit them all in one slide. It is a daily boot camp, and we have our resource collective that ties to it with the resource pages. We're going to continue the boot camp through June, but if you've missed some sessions, you can find all the previous sessions on our website, and they were recorded, so you can go back and watch those, and also view the materials that were presented on those sessions. So this week's topic, yesterday we had a good session on PPP forgiveness. We will have another one in a couple weeks. We are anticipating some changes from Washington to that program. And once those changes come out, those bills get passed, then we will dissect them and put together another session to give some new guidance and direction on the forgiveness. Today we have some virtual sales training from Sandler. We're really excited about this session and how we can leverage virtual sales. Thursday, we have our Safety in the Workplace by the National Safety Council. And then Friday is our Marketing to Return Stronger session. We've got some great presenters lined up for that as well. So just some updates, if you did not hear these yesterday, some PPP and EIDL updates. There is still well over 100 billion remaining in the PPP funds. And the PPP program continues through the end of June, unless the dates on that, as far as the new loans, change with the bills coming out of Washington. But again, there's plenty of funds. If you are still in the process and you haven't heard from your bank, please reach out to us and we can guide you to some lending institutions that has shown some good agility in getting these done for small businesses. The rest of the numbers on there, as you look at the combination of PPP and EIDL loans and EIDL advance, Arizona has received over $9.5 billion in loans in advance for small businesses to help support them. That's a huge economic input there, and it'll help these businesses survive and return stronger. We also want to talk about some key programs through our Small Business Services Division. We have Navigating the SBA and the SBDC. The SBDCs are a huge partner of ours, and they're a no-cost counseling service that's out in every community throughout the state. We also can provide local banking contacts. We have the latest developments in the small business world. Our workforce team is working with Arizona at Work to help provide programs for both the employees and the employers help return stronger. And our MEP, our Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program, is one of the top in the nation. And if you have a manufacturing facility or in manufacturing, they are a great resource to work with. We also want to touch real quick on Arizona Together, the state's website for COVID-19 information and resources. We've also put together these resource guides list for all the various different types of businesses. Organizations have put these guides together to help, whether it's a restaurant or a barber shop, return to work. These guides will help go through the different aspects you may need to be aware of to get going strong. So definitely take a look at them. For all things COVID related, you can also find through our ACA's COVID-19 page and the business resources there. So take a look at it. And today we have Sandler training with us. We have Mark, Kirsten, Link Miller and Mary Kriske helping us out. We're looking forward to their training program and sharing their insight on how to improve our sales virtually. So I'm going to close this up and turn the time over to Mark and his Sandler team.
All right, thank you, Robert. Appreciate it, and thanks to the ACA. You know, we've been engaged with them over the last couple of months with this, you know, COVID and lockdown, and it's a great partnership for us, but also, you know, just we found it to be a wonderful resource for the community. So we've been directing as many people that we engage with to resources at ACA that can help them navigate through a very difficult time. So we are going to share some slides with you and walk you through some of the resources that we've made available. As Sandler Training by Mercury, we're the local, you know, Sandler franchise here in the Arizona market. So you know, we're part of a national organization where this selling remotely training that we're talking about today has been delivered to over 7,000 people. But we are now here bringing it to the local community for you. And hopefully we'll give you two things. Number one, the title remote training is what we're doing here, but also, you know, we're really focused on how to sell remotely and how to use some of the tools that we have and how to appreciate that our traditional habits and our traditional way of selling, at least some of those have been restricted and will continue to be restricted as we navigate through this. So we need to become adept and use the tool sets that we have available, you know, to us to, you know, navigate our way and be as successful as we possibly can. So with that, I'll get this slideshow queued up here. So as we start off, you know, it's always good to reflect that, you know, the challenges come, but the challenges will play out, and that, you know, we will get back to, as you've heard the term way too often, a new normal, if you will, you know, but things play out, and we have to look at what can we do for ourselves and for our teams to be as successful as possible and take advantage of the opportunities as opposed to becoming a victim of them, because things will return. It's not a long-term thing. We're going to ask some questions for you throughout this presentation, and what we'd ask you to do, you know, they're largely rhetorical because with a large crowd like this, we can't do as interactive as we like to with smaller groups, but you know, just share any thoughts or any feedback that you have in the chat windows for everybody to have a secondary way of doing it. So as we ask you, you know, what are the things that you're struggling with in adapting you and your sales team to the remote environment, share some of those, because there's other people on the line that are likely, you know, seeing the same things. And it also will give us an opportunity to understand the issues that you're struggling with, and to the extent possible, you know, modify or address those during this presentation as well. So there's a starting point that we have here in terms of how to look at our environment and how to understand what can we control, what can we not control, and how can we adjust to the circumstances to be as successful as we can. And it also provides a framework for how to look at selling remotely and being successful with it. It's what we call the behavior, attitude, technique, success triangle. And it really reflects that success is a matter of combining these three elements, combining the attitude of confidence and certainty, and, you know, overcoming any fears and doubts that you have, you know, using that to spur your daily behaviors and weekly behaviors that are going to contribute to your success, and identifying what those are, and then having that complemented by a set of techniques and skill sets that you can bring into play. And we'll show you some of those of each of these, but we'll also share some of the techniques that will come into play. So again, some of these rhetorical questions, you know, what are the skill sets? Because things have changed. What are the skill sets that you see gaining importance in this new environment? And how are some of these changes changing the business model and changing the business environment? We'll identify some of this. What is the best practice for selling remotely? And one of the things, but actually, off the top of my head, I think that in many respects, selling remotely, once you become comfortable with it, is very similar to selling in person. The number one thing that you can do that's going to move your sales and change the way that you interact is asking better questions. we'll show you a little bit about how to do that. So with this, I'm going to ask Link if you will weigh in a little bit and talk about attitude and what we can do to manage and reflect our attitude. Link.
Okay, well, appreciate that, Mark. And thank you for the introduction, and also thank you, ACA, for putting this together. So let's talk about attitude. You know, attitude, when we go back to that triangle, attitude, behavior, technique triangle, it's really interesting that attitude is the one piece that is probably the largest of the movable middle, meaning that you can control your attitude, but the interesting thing is you can control your attitude by behavior. Now, when we think about this, if my belief, if I enter into this symbiote, this loop here, my belief in a certain situation, if I look at the attitude of right now that people aren't going to be picking up the phone, they're not going to want to talk to me, or whatever that is, all my judgments that I see from that point forward that I make about myself is that every call, everything I do is going to be negative. And because of that, my actions are, I'm going to be sullen. I'm not going to do the things that I should be doing. I'm not going to have the stature that I should. But really, when we talk about going on Zoom or emails, we have to think about, what is my belief? My belief is, and you know, my belief is that everybody that I get to talk to, I get to have a better day. So I want to talk to more people because I look at the world right now and I think, it's not doing so hot. Or maybe it's doing really good. It doesn't really matter. It's how I believe about myself. And the judgments I make about that is that I'm going to move through that, and my actions are going to be going to that. So if you think about it, your beliefs dictate your judgments. If you believe something to be bad, you're going to make a judgment about it, it's going to be bad. In fact, not only are you going to make a judgment about it, you're going to be looking for it. That's bad, or that's good, that's good, that's good. Just, you got to keep this in context. So then when you have those judgments that you make as something is bad, or this person is bad, or that person is bad, or this group's bad, or that group's bad, or this group is whatever, your actions are going to be, you're going to be standoff. You're not going to be as intimate that you can be and reach to them as you could as if you thought this was a good opportunity. Now, the interesting thing about attitude, I don't think anybody woke up in January of 2020 and said, I think I'm going to put a pandemic on my SWOT analysis. Did you, Mark?
Oh, no, definitely not. You know, I remember asking the question, boy, the economy is going so strong. It's got to correct at some point, but I don't see what it's going to be. I can't see what the roadblock or what the speed bump is going to be. And now, in retrospect, that seems silly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But interestingly enough, because of attitude, this pandemic, the protests, the political climate, all of this creates opportunities. You just got to look for them. And you got to know where to look for them. So when we talk about attitude, look under every rock. I know when I'm out as a little kid, when I wanted to go fishing, because I love to go fishing, I looked under every rock for a worm. I looked under every railroad tie for worms. I knew that was part of my process because that's how I know I got the results that I want. We have time to do this. We have time to think through this. So what are some new behaviors? We've got some new behaviors going on. Now look, some old behaviors we're going to have to push pause on. Networking, maybe not, because you can do a networking event through Zoom. Call up your family, call up your friends, put a networking event on your Zoom. Have dinner while you're doing it. Okay, social selling, your social media. All those places have to be combined now, and your effective cold calling and cold emailing has to be a different messaging. Thought leadership, being a blogger, putting things out there that help people to see the situation in a different light. Listen, this is a new behavior because everything's changed, so everyone's stuck in a little bit of fear. Now is the time to realize that there's more emotion flowing now than there was before because people are off balance. Webinar events and client relationships have to be a paramount of point. Mark?
So one of the things that I've noticed, which is you know, a blessing and a curse, if you will, but the Zoom meetings, well, you know, it can be extremely tiring when you have this circumstance go up. They're amazingly effective. You know, you can actually have back-to-back meetings with no downtime in between. And, you know, like I said, it can be somewhat exhausting when you have that crunched of a schedule, but I looked at it as wow, look at how efficient we can talk to 4 people in a very limited period of time and keep the ball rolling, keep the relationship developing. The last piece of this, introduction here, if you will, the behavior, attitude, technique triangle, is the techniques that you were going to deploy. So techniques being things like, how to start a conversation, how to build bonding and rapport in an online environment, and how that's unique or different than it is. How to ask the right questions to get people absolutely motivated, and how to hold people accountable when they make a decision, yes or no, so that we don't take a sale that we think we've lost or won, and end up having it go stale or the person go into hiding, which is common in both the offline and online environment, but it's even more important now as we have a more difficult time bringing in clients.
So Nancy was talking about the demographic that often needs us most is also often less adept at using technology, difficult to engage with them with virtual meetings, and she asked for thoughts. And like, I sent her a note back, but I wanted to address this because it's also really important. The bottom line, everyone still needs to connect. We are social beings, and we'll use any medium available to make that connection so that, right, we all have a story that we want to share and we want to be heard and understood. And so whether it's a Zoom or a phone call or whether it's email, whatever medium that person is most comfortable with, then that's the medium we use to connect with them. And if they're open and they want to learn to develop that skill set, then we guide them through that, whether it's a referral to someone else to help them through that, or it's us sitting down with them on the phone, walking them through how to use Zoom. So that's kind of what I was thinking regarding that, Nancy. Thank you for your question.
On that same point, Zoom calls and some of these contexts, when you're doing this interaction, you have to remember, you're getting to see someone in their private sanctuaries, unless of course they have a background on them, like Mark's, which isn't, it's actually a true background. But sometimes we have backgrounds that we can put on our screen on our Zooms. But remember, you're still, just because if you think about it, when you go face to face with someone, you're only focusing on their face. When you are in a Zoom meeting, you're only focusing on their face. The only thing is you can see your own face, which kind of can throw you off sometimes.
So as we look at, overall selling, but in the virtual environment, it changes a little bit, but we're really looking at how do we take a system and a process and plan ahead instead of just being on the fly. Because anytime that you take an unstructured process, make it more structured, make it more dependable, make it more predictable, we become more efficient at it, and we also know what to expect. We can see the dynamics that are playing out because we have a frame of reference on how to judge bonding and rapport and how to judge the people we're talking about. We can see what we need to do before every call with our pre-call strategies. We can see what we need to do with our post-call strategies. And we'll talk through a few of those. Link, you want to talk a little bit more about the ideal client profile?
Absolutely. So when you think about your ideal client or your ideal customer, well, it's kind of like this. If you're going hunting, you have to get a certain license, or if you're going fishing, you have to get a certain license, and you can only take certain things. And it kind of sets you in that position that you're looking for what you're looking for. Now, who do you best serve? Who are your best customers? Well, your ideal client profile at this time, the beautiful of this point is that you get to resort, you get to reshuffle. Do I have the right clients? What are they looking for? What are the triggers that make them? So if I understand what their pains are or their triggering moments that cause them to go, you know what, I have to have this conversation. Because if you think about it, when you need something, really price does not become a factor when you need something. So if you think about what are the triggering moments that would cause someone to need something and you position yourself to be in that person's view, they'll move towards you. Interestingly enough, you have to understand what the pain indicators are. The things that cause pain is not necessarily hurt, but it's also gain. There are so many transactions going on right now because people are trying to gain a position, gain something, move from one place that they're at to a new place. Then you also have people that just want to get to that next level. What are the triggering events? What are the things that would cause someone to go, I need this? Think about this. When I think about, people tell me all the time and tell us all the time, hey, we have some trouble with making cold calls. Or we have trouble getting people on Zoom calls. Is that a pain? No, that's a pain indicator. That does not mean I have a solution for it until I find out what is it that is actually holding them from that behavior of making that call. Once we understand that, then we can formulate a program, formulate a training, formulate kinds of, an understanding, if you will, better to help that person. And then we market that. Now, when you think about your marketing, you think about what is being said to you, think about how things are being said. There are things that are done in PR as well as in sales that allow that person to feel connected. Now, if you understand that people are feeling disconnected and you use 3 words from their vocabulary in that conversation, they're going to bond with you. Just 3 words. Now, you got to keep doing this, and you got to make sure that you have the right connection. But when you talk about who's your best customer, well, we have to look at our customers in a couple different categories. You might have your keep accounts. This comes from the KARE model. We'll talk about this in a moment. But the keep account, you have a KARE. This is your keeper. This is your ideal customer. You have attain. That's someone that you want to go out after, and you need to strategize how you go about that. We help people with that all the time. Then you have your recapture. These are people that you've done business with in the past, but you're just checking in on them. And right now, you need to go check on those people, because those people might be at the right time. You might be calling me like, man, we were just thinking about you yesterday. I'm so glad you called. That's a triggering moment. The last one is expand. So you're having a customer, your existing customers, that they need to expand into new opportunities, and they need to see new things. So these are some ideas on ways that we work with customers to help them to grow and grow and grow, even in times when everybody else is contracting. So when you think about your ideal company client profile, you have to have an avatar for that person. So was that what you looked for, Mark, or did you need more?
No, I think that's what we're looking for. And it's a matter of appreciating the change in the environment and realizing that some of the customers that we've served in the past might not be as viable as they are now. And we may need to redirect ourselves to more viable customers. There are industries that have been severely impacted, and it's not that we're abandoning them, it's just that they may not be viable enough for us to continue to engage with them. If they're throwing live events, for example, or in-person activities, we need to look for opportunities and shift our model towards people that we can actually work with and help, that have an economic model themselves. And in the meantime, those industries themselves that are impacted, need to also look at their industries and see, how can I shift my model? And oftentimes that model is a shift that they wouldn't have embraced before because they were in a comfort zone, or they had a regular business model, but now things are different and they have to be innovative. Mary, I wonder if you could share real quick the story that we heard from the mayor of Prescott about, and his camp business, which was really significantly impacted by by the COVID lockdown, the ability to have in-person summer camps, and what they did innovatively to shift their business online.
Yeah, so really that was such an interesting story. So we've got the mayor of Prescott, we're working with him on a program, and something that, like, they were devastated by COVID. It was like lost millions of dollars. There's summertime, right? Any summer camp is going to be making their millions during the summer, and being so impacted, they decided to put their camps online. And by doing that, by pivoting their position and their business to actually, to Link's point, to a broader audience, they're actually going to be pulling in more dollars. And so they're able to kind of adjust their mindset and adjust their who they're serving, what they're currently doing, understanding the pain indicators of the families who can't send their kids to camp and that be able to do it online. And right, so it's triggered a whole nother line of thinking and a profit center for them. But because they stopped doing what they were doing and they repositioned, it gave them greater opportunity to connect with a wider audience. It was brilliant.
And what's interesting to me about that in the context is, here is a business that was significantly challenged because they couldn't have face-to-face activities. They may have had a set of vendors or set of people that they worked with that were also going to feel the pull-through effect of that negative impact, but they pivoted their business model to be online and deliver their camps online, which means they need new vendors. They need new people to help them pivot their business, to get them online, to manage the subscriptions and the kids that are navigating online, and they don't have existing relationships. for those. So those are opportunities. Those are opportunities that, you know, if we're out hunting and we're looking for ways that we can help people as they shift their business model or they adapt to this, they have needs, they have a urgency that's going to move the sales cycle along quickly, and that may or may not overlap you. The only way you find out is by engaging with them and asking them what's their challenges, what are they struggling with. Now, social selling, of course, is one of those areas we see on the rise right now. You know, everything that we talk about for the most part when we're talking about virtual selling has a social element to it. But you know, the LinkedIn platforms, the Facebook platforms, these are things that gain importance right now, and there are more eyeballs working through those platforms for us to engage with. Go ahead, Mary.
So Mark, something about social selling that I think we need to keep in mind, if we're just pushing our own agenda at all times, it's not very attractive. And we all kind of just get sick of it in general, like as a population. But when we're taking the time to highlight other people and what other people are doing and how we're working with a greater good, that is actually a narrative that catches people's attention. So if we're posting just about how great our product is, you know, why they need to work with us, and just moving our own agenda, that's a very self-focused, myopic view. But if we're really challenging ourselves to say, hey, I'm working with, like, for instance, Mark, and these are the things that Mark is doing, moving his business forward, that narrative actually, you're able to connect with it. Because remember, everything we want to do, we are social beings, and we want to connect with people, and we want to understand their story, and we want to hear what's going on in the world as we want to be heard and understood. And so utilizing social selling as a platform to boost other people, to show how we're working in conjunction for the greater good, actually has a lot more traction.
I'm going to pivot off that, Mary, because you know one of the fundamental Sandler approaches to selling is first, don't be a salesperson. So remember that in all of your engagements with your potential prospects and your current prospects, don't be a salesperson. Think about them, not about yourself. Because ask yourself, do you like to be sold to? And the answer is most of the time, no. Nobody wants to be sold to. So if you come off in your first engagement on a social media exchange as, you know, come buy my product, I can help you, the first response from the prospect is somebody's trying to sell me and they're thinking about their agenda and not mine. We have to first seek to understand them and what they're trying to accomplish, and if we can help them, then we help them. If we can't help them, then we point them to somebody who might be able to help them.
Interesting you mentioned that. Bill Waite, Bill, I'm probably mispronouncing your last name, just asked a question about distributors. And distributors, when you think about it, if you're selling through distributors and you're relying on distributors to bring things out to people and whatnot, you really have to think about and get inside with them and be of assistance to them and with them, because then they see that they're not alone on their own island and that they're there, that you're actually there to help. You know, over the last 20 years working with companies over the entire world that live in this distributor model, it's a very good model, but it's also how do you handle that channel? And how do you handle what you're going to see and what they're going to see in the social, and how you help people? That becomes part of the matrix as you make that part of your behavior, or what we like to call that cookbook recipe for success. Is that how often you talk to your distributors, how often you find out about them, how much you do things? Because let's call it what it is. Those of us who are in the bid world, I know I've been in the bid, Mark, you've been in the bid world, right? Mary,
Yeah.
World, right? When you might have the greatest product in the world, but the reality is this: if people don't like you, they won't buy from you. They won't work with you. You've got to have some likability factor that goes into this. And you have to understand, you know, what's the motivation pieces? What are their pains? What is that distributor trying to do? Because that distributor is trying to build their business. You got to help them with that. So just keeping that in mind. But great point, Mary. Great point.
Mary, can you talk a little bit about this email and messaging?
Absolutely. So it's the exact same formula as we're going to be using with the social media selling. It's really what's in it for the other person we're emailing or direct messaging. And we know that when we are all about self or moving our own product forward and not really about the other person, those emails most likely are not going to be read. So it's really a strategic process of how to get your email read. And I think Link has a bunch of statistics of how often emails are read or not read, but we know there's a couple of things we do know is that when we are using short subject lines and they're actually interesting, and you actually put the name of the person you want to talk to in there, or if let's say you're referring someone, you're like, hey, John, I want to refer you to Frank in the subject line, or like, hey, Frank referred me to you in the subject line, they're going to go, oh, okay, cool. Right, you're going to capture their attention. The one thing we want to do is capture their attention so that they open the email. Now, we don't want our emails to be super long and laden with detail because our attention span is not that great. We all have ADHD on some level. And so we want to, in our 3 to 5 sentences total, our introduction and purpose, right, those pain indicators, like what is going on in their world that they'll be like, oh, okay, yes, I am uncomfortable. Our unique selling proposition, well, what is that? Do you have one? Is it written out? Is it clear? And then asking what you're asking for. And then of course, right, we're gonna follow it up with a phone call. And the reason why we send an email and a phone call is all about connection. Oh, so I think, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a follow-up progression. You know, we send the email, we follow up with a call. People need to be touched multiple times before they're going to even notice that things are going to happen. So, you know, it's an opportunity to touch people multiple times and engage with them. Again, don't be a salesperson as you're doing it, but at the same time, don't rely on just one channel. It's a multi-channel, multi-touch, you know, engagement to see if they're willing to have a conversation with you, and if they are, a non-pressure sales call that is a way to allow them to engage and share their challenges and us to decide whether or not we can help them. So on the pre-call checklist, you know, it's just good, solid planning. What are we trying to accomplish? Who's going to be there? How much time do we have? What decisions can we make? Is this a decision of we're working together or not working together? Or is this more of a decision of, you know, should we have a follow-on discussion? What can we do next? Because there should always be a clear future, meaning a firm future commitment for what's going to happen next, even if it's, I'm going to call you in 3 months or 6 months, as opposed to anything that's going on now. Or look for the opportunity to help them by pointing them to somebody else. Because when you help them by pointing them to somebody else, or you are willing to not try to go in for the kill right at the moment, then you're helping that prospect, but you're also helping the person that you refer them to. And both of them are going to think better of you and be more likely to point people in your direction.
So Mark, before we get to this question, something that I do in my pre-call checklist is really making sure that it's about the other person. And anytime that formula flips, the calls are really dead and not engaging. And so it's really, you know, when we're like, how much time do they have for the conversation? What's their biggest concern of what's going on in their world? What is it that I can help them to address? And if it's okay if there's no reason to move forward, but who can I introduce you to? It's a very them-centered conversation that actually, to Mark's point, it relieves all the pressure because no one's feeling it, because it's truly a service.
All right, so let's go through a few of the best practices for remote selling. Some of them are common to in-person selling. Some of them are somewhat unique. Some of them are very tactical, like looking at the camera and trying to, you know, reflect on what is your camera angle, what is your lighting like, what is your background like? Is that the image that you want to project to the people that you're talking to? Some of them are a little bit more subtle, things like what you described, Link, before of, you know, just connect questions. Don't focus on selling, just focus on making a connection, building the bonding and rapport as the first step of a sales process. Is people buy from people that they like. You need to be likable, and you don't need to make it up on the fly. You need to understand what is it that makes people likable. One of them is them expressing interest in you. So ask questions about their industry, about their marketplace, about their company, about them, and use it in that progression, because it's more comfortable to talk at a high level and then narrow in step by step onto what's happening in their world, so they're not uncomfortable with being too personal too quickly. But it's a very systematic approach of, you know, this question is going to change. This is a connect question. it changes based on the environment, based on the circumstances. When, you know, a few weeks ago when we first did, you know, this particular selling remotely, it was how does COVID impacted your business? How does it impacted your industry? That's kind of moved on now because there's a lot of other changes. There's economic changes. There's, you know, societal uprising changes. So, you know, change the questions as you move along, but at the same time, start big and narrow into what's happening in their world as a person and connect with them. So, Mary, yeah, go ahead and bring us through. You know, this is a particular process. It happens to be the Sandler process. I'll let Mary go into the details of it, but you know, whether you use the Sandler process or use somebody else's process, there's a lot of them out there. Have a sales process. Don't wing it. Don't make it up as you go along. Mary, bring us through this one.
Very good. So I agree with you, Mark, about the importance of having a process, like even those connect questions, right? You're not talking about the weather and you're not just staying in the weather conversation. You're actually driving with a purpose to understand their world and to links points so that they have something to connect to, right? Because we like to buy from people we like. So this is our Sandler process. And the first one is about bonding and rapport. And there's so much incredible information about bonding and rapport. It's a lot deeper than mirroring and matching. It's be able to read the personality on the other side of the screen, on the phone, and understanding at a high level and even down to very specifics of how they're going to react. It's understanding like the psychology behind every conversation and actually the anatomy of a sales call. And right here is the anatomy of a sales call, and be able to break it down so that when, let's say we're not great at closing, and that's okay, but what part of closing are you not great at? When you can pinpoint that specific behavior or attitude or technique, guess what? You can change it. And that's the power of what Mark is talking about having a system, pick and go. The number two, which I have found to be extremely beneficial, and I really work a lot with my clients on building strong upfront contracts. And because this is a mutually beneficial, satisfying meeting agreement between both partners on both sides of the coin. Because it's really understanding what they want and wrapping our product and service around what they want. Then also we've got pain. Link alluded to pain indicators, but what is the actual motivation of why people want to do what they want to do? Talking about money. There's all sorts of things about money. Does it make you nervous? Do you get uncomfortable? Well, that's something that you've got to deal with because you're the sales professional. You're the one who's going to be driving the conversation. We do not allow the buyer to drive it. And then also the understanding the decision, when to do your presentation, right? We don't want to do it too soon. And understanding, like removing that buyer's remorse, setting up how they want to be communicated after the sale is made. And then more importantly, building your referral network, right? Because that's how our companies grow, is through connection.
Interesting. Yeah, well, interesting, Mary. You talk about this process, and look, you've got to have a process, no matter what you do. And if you think about it, you have processes for everything. We get processes for how to put our socks on when we start to break them down. Mr. Graff, I was just talking with Mr. Graff on the chat file. He was talking about, well, you get people, and I use the analogy of looking at a rock. Yeah, you're looking at a rock because you're looking for places to find connections. You're looking for places to have relationships. And he asked, well, what do you do when what you're doing helps them now, but it may not help them in the future? Or how do you get them to see that you're going to be there for the future? Well, that's just part of the process. Is that this process is a co-created solution. We don't come in and we don't tell, this is what you should do, this is what you should do, because that's a surest way of someone saying, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. I mean, example, Mary or Mr. Graff, do you like being told what to do? Do you like being said, you're going to do this, Mary? You're going to take on the next slide right next. What? You like that? No.
No.
We don't like that. But if we give it the opportunity to work together, and we asked them, what would your world look like after? What do you want your world to look like after the pandemic? And it might be 2 years, it might be 3 years, it might be 6 months, it might be 2 days from now. Who knows? Okay, the world changes so fast. And time is irrelevant because it's really about where do you want to end. And that thing that you see there, and step number 2, that upfront contract, get them thinking about the future. Ask them where they want their future to be and how you look like, or what your product or service looks like inside of that. Once you have that collective agreement, now you can move forward. So I just want
the thing that I observe in this context is our fulfillment stage, or our presentation, our proposal, how we're going to help them doesn't happen until the very end. All too often as salespeople, we jump at trying to tell people how to solve their problems before we completely understand what it is they're trying to solve and how they want to navigate or proceed through the decision process. This is a process that, establishes the relationship, establishes expectations and a structure for how to engage, understands what they want to accomplish, what they're willing to spend for it, how they're going to make a decision, and then takes all that information and combines it into, as you said, a co-created solution. And a post-sell, which is how to ask the right questions to make sure that once they've committed to do something or said yes to something, that they don't now back off and go in a different direction.
And also, just to add to that point, it's also if things go wrong, because in any relationship, we have to have that conversation. If things go wrong, how are we going to handle it? That's what the post-sale's for. Make sure that you have a relationship that continues on. We did a lot of work. You guys have done a lot of work to gain your customers. Now it's about keeping them, because that's just as much fun as finding them.
I'm going to keep the pace up a little bit. We want to make sure that we leave enough time for Q&A at the end. Some of this we've talked about, so if we move quickly through the slides, it's because we've covered some of it verbally, but use this upfront contract in every engagement with your prospect and use it to move them from step to step to step along the sales process. Understand why people buy. People buy based on emotions. They're either worried about things that are hurting them right now, pain in the present. They're worried about things in the future, that's pain in the future, and it's fear. Or they're focused on what can they do to build, to get better, to get things more efficient, they're not worried necessarily in a negative sense, but they want to have gains either in the present or in the future. Understanding this and understanding how to ask the right questions in order to uncover it, because people are reluctant to share their emotions and their conflict at the beginning. It's key to motivating them and getting them to make a decision and optimizing what they're willing to invest in order to accomplish it. And then we'll post-sell everything. We'll post-sell the referrals. When we ask for referrals, every successful client engagement should include a upfront contract or a post-sell as to what referrals might happen when or if we're satisfied with the results of the existing project. But also a great time to ask for referrals is when you just heard no. It's not a fit for them, but maybe it's a fit for somebody else that they know. Ask for the referral. Make sure that they don't have buyer's remorse and establish what the upfront contract is for the next engagement or for what the next steps are as we progress our relationship. And then do our post-call debrief. Link, walk us through the post-call checklist, if you will.
Oh, the post-call checklist. Interesting stuff here, guys. If we cannot figure out what their pains are, if we can't walk away and going, they're frustrated about this, they're upset about this, they're angry about this, they're worried about that, they're anxious about this, they love this, we don't really have a full clarity of what's going on. We don't really understand the depth of what's going on. You also have to think about, do we actually have a viable solution? So maybe they have pain, but your solution isn't for that. Your solution is just a Band-Aid, and that's going to cause a rift in that relationship, because they might buy it because they like you, but then there's all this pressure because your product or service doesn't provide what needs to be there. Do they have the time, meaning not necessarily time, do they have time to change behavior, to your new process, to putting that new software in, to doing that user adoption? Do they have that time to do that? Do they have the resources? And meaning, do they have people to help them do that? Do they have the money to do this? Because sometimes they might have time, but they don't have the money. They might have the resources, but they don't have the money, and they don't have the time. It's a combination of these things. Is there a clear future decided? Which means they may not be able to do it today, but you're going to talk about as you move them through the process, you know what's going to happen along the way. Because you might not have pain, but you have a clear future to come back and talk about pain. You have a clear future to come back and talk about the money, the time, and the resources. And also, what happens if it doesn't happen? What is your contingency plan? If they don't buy your product or service, they don't use you as your service provider, what happens for them? Let them work through that. Notice that it's going to take, when Mark talked about this earlier, and we talked about it earlier, it takes a few touches, a few contacts. Right now, to get a hold of someone, industry standard is about 5 to 7 touches, which might be a text message, an email, a phone call, social media, boom. Then they might get, there's 5. On the 5th one, you pick up the call and they call you, or they call you back. That might be 5 touches. Remember, you got to count these things. You got to measure these things, because that's where the true behavior comes in, and that recipe and cookbook for success is. Here we have our slide, and we talked about this earlier: a keep account, an attain account, recapture account, expand account. All of these require touches. All of these require time to communicate with them. Your keep accounts, your bread and butter, these are the ones that are always there for you, and they're good relationships, good things. Attain, you haven't done work with them, or you want to do work with them, this would be someone that you're looking under the rock for. The recapture, people you've done work with in the past, but you have a good relationship. Maybe you had a good relationship and someone left, and now you haven't, or you had a bad relationship. You had a relationship, then someone came in and you got pushed out, and now that person has left, and now you come back and say, hey, how you doing? Just checking in on you. You might be able to find some money there. You might be able to find a client there. And then you always have the expand, because you have people that they see you being successful. They see how you take care of everybody else. They see how their business is going, and they recognize, yeah, I need some help. That's, again, a touch call. Find out, because remember, just because you're working in one division of a company or one group of people, they have other people. That's your referrals. That's your introductions. That's all those places. Build relationships by gaining this, man. You got to have social capital. Give and listen. Give and listen. Build relationships by staying connected. Authority, add value. You're adding value because your authority in that group grows when you add value. But here's the thing. Don't put it as your value. Let them tell you what your value is. And when they say, this is what the value they see, and you ask them, would you like more? That's how you get that authority. You got to let them. You can't push on people. You got to let them come to you. Build intimacy by being open. Listen, I put my background. That's my family right there. That's my family right there. Okay? I want people to know who I am, because these are the people that I have long term. We have a context that we always talk about. Where's your best friend? If you're in jail somewhere, would you call your best friend? I'm not calling my best friend when I'm in jail, because my best friend's sitting next to me, going, "That was dumb," or "Wow, that was dumb." Okay, and then the next move: how do we get out of here? So that's the whole thing. Do you see your client relationships? Do you see a change in them? Absolutely do, because they're afraid, and we're afraid too. If we acknowledge that and we move through that, we're able to help more people.
All right, so as we reflect on this, and we're nearing the end and opening up for questions here, but what is the one attitude, behavior, and or technique that you learned today? Because it's always valuable to, reflect back and say, if I change my attitude, and I can use the belief wheel as a method to look for opportunity as opposed to adversity. I can look for what behaviors am I going to commit to this week? How many new prospects am I going to talk to on a given week basis? Because if I can quantify what I'm doing, I can now monitor it and improve it and change it. And what technique can I adopt? Take some of the ones that we presented today. Don't try to commit to all of them, but try to look for which ones might be applicable for you. And ask for help. And it may be from us, it may be from somebody else that but you're not in this alone. We've heard that very, very broadly, but people are more willing to help than ever these days. Look for people who've had the experience, who have the skill sets, and ask them if they can help you navigate to the things that you're trying to accomplish. And of course, we're prepared to help as well. And, if you do want to reach out to us and have a conversation about things that you're struggling with, there's no charge to talk to us, right? It's just a opportunity to engage, to build a new relationship, and at some point, whether or not we think maybe it would make sense to work together, that's great too. But don't hesitate to use the relationship as the starting point. And we'll switch over to the Q&A section here and take some of those questions to make sure that we're adding value for what you're looking to take away from today.
I'm on the chat file with Michael right now, Mr. Brown. Yes, Mr. Brown. Be you. Be you. That's all you can be. Now, you could rip your shirt open and have a Superman chest on there if you like, but be you. Be you. Questions? Concerns? We just did we bore everybody?
No, we've got in the Q&A box down below, we've got a question that says, I love that. May I quote you? Skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is. So that was one of the comments in there.
Absolutely.
Well, Link, I recall your analogy on the racetrack where you've described if somebody, loses control and runs into the wall, at what point did you lose that? What point did you lose that? It's not when you run into the wall.
That was a result.
Yeah, that was the result of what happened, 30 seconds or 5 seconds earlier. It's skating to where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is right now. And same thing with your sales behaviors. If your results are negative, it's not because of what you did today, it's because of what you didn't do a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And that's all right, because we can change what we do today, behavior-wise. And we can also look back when it comes to analyzing what went wrong. It's always what led up to the result, not what happened at the final. If I lost the deal, it wasn't because of what I did in the presentation. It's because I didn't prepare and gather the information I needed in the presentation.
So William was asking, could you go into more detail of finding the customer's pain or challenges? That's a big conversation, William, but maybe Link can touch it real quick.
That is a big conversation, Mr. Is it Mr. Bolts? Is that? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, because I will most definitely mess it up. So please forgive me if I already messed it up. Okay, now pain, finding someone's pain or understanding someone's pain. I love to use a fishing analogy. The fish only bite when they're hungry, and if they're hungry, they're in pain because they can't get what they want. Now listen, there's pain, but then there's weakness. I can live with pain, but what challenges me to go do something is when I suffer weakness. So example, I have bad knees, and I have bad knees from playing football. But when those things when it gets too bad, then I'm going to take some medicine because there's weakness, because I can't move, I can't run, I can't lift, I can't walk, I can't stand, because that's what weakness is. So our job at finding a customer's pain is not to ever put pain on them and to tell them, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. It should be rather, how are things going? What's going on? I mean, I see your office. I see you're still working right now, so it must be good. Oh, no, because sales has got to be counterintuitive. If you tell everyone it's going to be good, it's like this. It's going to be a great day. No, it's not, because I got this problem, I got this problem, I got this problem. They're always going to go the opposite direction. So if you go, man, it's been a pretty good day today, but I don't suppose you're running into this or this or this, and you put those pain triggers or those things that you know that your product or service solves, and you put them as triggers. You don't say, we solve this problem, we solve that problem. You say, I don't suppose you ran into this. I don't suppose you ran into this. That gets them to start thinking, because the psychology is, if I ask you a question, how many of us know this? If I said to you right now, Mr. Bolts, if I ask you a question, you better, and you'd say, answer it. Because we don't have to think about it, because we've been scripted in this path. Ask a question, answer a question. Ask a question, answer a question. Get asked a question, answer it. Our world is, you have to ask that question for a reason. Help me understand so that I can better answer your question. Does that help, Mary?
Yep, thank you so much.
And Wayne Gretzky is the greatest.
Oh, Wayne Gretzky. And then David mentioned, do you think aside from post-sell, we can cross-sell our weaknesses or not just your strengths? Do you think aside from the post-sales, we can cross-sell on our weaknesses, not just our strengths? Sorry, processing.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I understand the question entirely, David. If you update it a little bit more and give me a little bit more information, Russ, a little bit more information, we might be able to get into better detail. But just to do top of mind on what I do see there, post-sell is really a tactic, if you will, to take when somebody comes at you and says, yes, I want to accomplish this, I want to make sure that sticks. So rather than just take it at face value, I ask them, well, are you sure you want to meet? Are you sure you want to move forward? Not because I want them to back off, but because I want them to have the opportunity to back off, and I want them to come a step closer to me and say, yes, I'm absolutely sure I want to meet, or yes, I'm absolutely sure I want to move forward. So they commit a second time. The second piece of the post-sell is establishing what the next steps are. So maybe this is where that cross-sell comes into place. And I may say, look, you know, we've agreed to work on part A of your challenge, and it makes complete sense that we would take baby steps before we take big steps. Would it make any sense if we set a timeline so that 3 months down the road, after we've had a chance to work together, we can discuss the rest of the project and decide whether or not you think it would make sense to move forward on that? So now I've established that second piece of the upsell, you know, based on other ways that I can.
So David clarified, he said, depending on what our business is, we can leverage our cross-selling whatever multiple business lines we can offer or bring other services to the fray, which can further our casualty for improving our businesses.
Causality, yes. Yes, it can, but it has to be in a question form. It cannot be, this is what we do. We do this and this and this and this. It has to be in a question-based conversation, and almost to the point of where you're actually like confused. I have these things, but would it make sense to, I know I'm over dramatizing it, but you get the point, is that you have to do a little bit of acting and you have to just bring it in. If you're excited about telling somebody something, don't be excited.
All right.
Don't be excited.
And I don't see any other questions, and I believe we're pretty much at the, there is one more here. One thing I'd like to elaborate on real quick was the pain question that we had before, just on a very tactical basis. If everybody who's listening here, go look up what's called the Sandler pain funnel. Put it into Google. You'll get a response, and you'll see the Sandler pain funnel, you know, all over the place on the open internet. Print that. That is a sequence of about 9 to 12 questions that starts at a very surface level and navigates and drills into the real emotional context that people has. And you know, you guys can take that and put it into play. All right. And the system, or the simplest way to organize your sales process for follow-up, looking for a good CRM. Link, you want that one or you want me?
It really depends on your budget and the purpose of what you're going about doing and how much technology you want. So I know everyone that has a very simple one that just kind of, it's like play school style, to a very complex one. So yeah, I mean, offline I can share what I'm doing and we can share what we're doing, but I'm not quite sure if
there's no one size fits all on a CRM system. You know, some people use spreadsheets, some people use use one that you're going to use. That would be my number one thing is don't commit to something that's bigger than what you would actually use on a regular basis, because just like having a sales process, having a CRM process is the first step. Keep track of the people that are in your pipeline, identify what your pipeline looks like. It's like how many steps of the sales process from the first engagement to the close, and let your pipeline and your CRM reflect that so that you can keep track of where people are at and what the next steps are. And that's the simplest approach to it. So I see your images come back, Robert. Are you prepared to sign us off for the day?
Yeah, we're at that point at the hour mark. We appreciate Mark, Mary, and Link, your input and the insights you shared with us today. We had some questions. The slides and the recording of this webinar will be available on our website. That'll be uploaded at some point today, and you can go back and review that, or have your teams go back and review it for more information. So again, we appreciate the Sandler team for sharing this information with us today. They'll be sharing some more with us in the future as well, so we appreciate their efforts and their help with that. And thank you all for attending, and have a great day.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to the ACA and Robert and Mark for organizing this. I love that you guys are doing this daily, because it's just the tool sets that we need to make it through this very crazy time so we can come out on top in the end. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Hey, guys. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Mark.
Both Marks.
And thanks everyone else on. And I want to say, I want to put my magic mirror up, and I want to say thank you to Robert, and I want to say thank you to.
That's frightening.
For those of us who remember Romper Room.
All right. Well, for me, it's time for my second cup of coffee. We'll see you later, guys.
All right, have a good one.
Bye, guys.
See you later.